That's right.
But now we are in a situation after the global financial crisis in 2008 and a lot of other events. We're in a situation where this trust is waning in the dollar. And that's linked to elements that are part of the monetary system and part of the definition of who is the hegemon, because money doesn't operate in a vacuum. It is also not limited to what we discussed, what it does in an economy, but it's also it's backed up by military force, which is basically the insurance for the monetary system to stabilize it. And it has links to what you can say, technology, to law, that are all part of this system and that keep it going. And now this system is cracking basically because there is a reluctance to buy this constantly growing American debt, which is part of the system, which can grow, it can still grow on and on and on. There's no intrinsic reason why it shouldn't be able to grow.
大家好，这里是感人四绝频道。刚才这段精彩集锦说透了一个常被忽略的现实：美元之所以长期站在国际货币体系的中心，靠的从来不只是金融市场的规模，更是军事力量、技术标准、法律规则与全球支付网络共同托起的信任。但问题是，信任一旦出现裂缝，再庞大的债务机器也不可能永远高速运转。美国债务持续膨胀，美元被频繁用于制裁和地缘博弈，越来越多国家开始思考，把所有鸡蛋都放进美元这个篮子，真的安全吗？本期节目将从货币到底是什么讲起，追溯美元如何借助布雷顿森林体系与实用美元建立优势，也深入分析2008年金融危机后全球去美元化为何逐渐加速。更关键的是，中国推动人民币国际化究竟是要取代美元，还是为世界提供另一根支柱？从 CEPS 货币互换到本币结算，多货币时代的轮廓正在慢慢浮现。美元体系会轰然倒下，还是在压力中重组？接下来的内容值得细看。
To answer your question.
Okay.
Maybe to try to link that to the hegemon question without any value judgments, pun intended. There's a good reason why the dollar is so dominant in the monetary system, and as a result of which the one who controls the dollar becomes the hegemon. This is a systemic element in the monetary system, and so the fact that the United States controls the dollar is obvious to anyone, but everybody in the international monetary economy, everybody that transacts and trades and wants the dollar because it's the guarantee for a seamless transaction, a seamless means of payment, a seamless unit of account, a seamless store of value at the global level. And there are historic reasons for it. I mean, we can go into that, but very briefly, we had Bretton Woods. After the Second World War, the Americans had this industrial surplus that had to go somewhere. So Bretton Woods was created, and the dollar was the anchor currency of the system. Even though, obviously, at the time, the UK wanted something else, but they didn't get it, the Bancor, which would have been a sort of neutral, a sort of Esperanto currency. But the Americans said, no way, we paid for this war, we won. So we're going to have the dollar as the base of the monetary system. And they linked that to gold. So that's Bretton Woods. And so everybody that was trading in dollars could buy this surplus, but they could also trade it in for gold. So there was a global confidence in the strength of the currency. Now, in 1978, with Nixon, we had the Nixon shock. So the Americans took the dollar off the gold peg, and it started floating. And so the Americans looked for another anchor, and they found this in oil. So that created the petrodollar. That was the next anchor for this expansion of monetary trust, and that kept on going the dollar as a reserve currency. And now, later on, obviously, we had a couple of crises. We will talk about that later, because they are also ingrained in the system. They're built in.
That's right.
But now we are in a situation, after the global financial crisis in 2008 and a lot of other events, we're in a situation where this trust is waning in the dollar. And that's linked to elements that are part of the monetary system and part of the definition of who is the hegemon, because money doesn't operate in a vacuum. It is also not limited to what we discussed, what it does in an economy, but it's also backed. It's backed up by military force, which is basically the insurance for the monetary system to stabilize it. And it has links to what you can say, technology, to law, that are all part of this system and that keep it going. And now this system is cracking basically because there is a reluctance to buy this constantly growing American debt, which is part of the system, which can grow, it can still grow on and on and on. There's no intrinsic reason why it shouldn't be able to grow. But if the trust wanes, this whole thing comes tumbling down. And that is also in part a result of the way we create money, how we use it, because money is created as debt. The moment, you have this mortgage at the bank, there's a double bookkeeping system, there's 100,000 that goes from the bank to you, and the house is placed on the other side of the ledger, and these two are always connected. So by the time you have paid for your 100,000 in the house, this money is disappearing from the system. And internationally, that's the same thing. Now, the whole problem is the hegemon going to repay when I ask my money back? And people have a growing concern that this is going to be the case. And that is why debt is a problem.
Yeah, maybe I totally agree with Mark's statements there just now. I'm just trying to think if I can make it in a very simple, let's say we're two tribes, right? Let's say somewhere in a desolate island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, for the sake of the argument. And there's two tribes, and we've decided that both of us pay with shells that we find on the beach, and the shinier the shell, the more valuable it is, whatever it is. And both tribes use the same shell, so we both have the same trust in the money. But let's say that one tribe decides that, I don't know, there's shiny nuts on the island that are also, or little pebbles that have a very nice shimmer along it, that's more valuable, right? The soft trust is the soft trust that we used to have, that when I give you shells and you give me shells, we're talking about the same. Now, I might not trust your shiny pebbles anymore, and the other might not trust the shells anymore. That's the soft trust. Then there is the hard trust that says, irrespective of whether you trust my shiny shell or shiny pebble, I now come with my spares and shields, and at spare point will force you to accept my new shiny pebble, right? So let's call that hard trust. And I think that's a very basic analogy, the dimensions that Mark just sketched on, what the most dominant or hegemonic player in this currency domain acts as. I think maybe going back to your original question as well, Ariel, maybe to throw some data in there for those who like it. If we look at 2024, so that's about 1.5 years ago, and that's pre-Iran war and all those horrible things, right? If you look at a number of well-known economic dimensions, you will see that the US dollar is by far still dominant. It holds about 60% of international reserves. It holds about 50% of worldwide international debt, about 50% of worldwide international loans. It constitutes about 50% of the global payment currency. It's about 50% of the currency exchange turnover, followed in all aspects by the euro in the second place. So on the let's say we just discussed the value of money, right? And the three functions it has on all those aspects. In terms of the data where we do the counting, the US dollar is still on top. So that is a straight answer to your question. And it also straight away reinforces the point that Mark makes, in the sense that once you have the prevalence or dominance in any of these areas, it starts to create a network effect, because the trust, either soft or hard, increases. The more people use it, the more people believe it. Again, I'll show the 10 euro piece. If there's no trust in this paper, no one would want to use it anymore, right? So the more people use it, the more it strengthens itself. So that's the network effect that people talk about. And that has been building, as Mark alluded to, since Bretton Woods, to the point where we are now. And that is changing.
So in a way, it could be comparable to, at least for those who study economics, to the economies of scale for businesses, whereby as they grow, they are, in a way, their power is facilitated over the network that you recently just explained. It is important to mention, I found interesting that you mentioned this turning points in a way that have strained a little bit of the soft and the hard power that the dollar has in the international financial system. So would you be able to identify concrete turning points and push and pull factors over the past decades that have accelerated this shift in the international monetary system?
Ooh, that is a very tricky question, Ariel, because it's, as one of our authors wrote, it's slowly at first and then all of a sudden very fast. There is no, there's no single event that you can pinpoint and say, this was it, this is where it all happened, right? You could argue that Bretton Woods was, from the very start, already had inbuilt grievances on the system, right? As Mark alluded to, the UK wanted Bancor, didn't get it. By the way, the UK wasn't alone. Economically, it was a very sensible proposal. It just didn't fly politically. So maybe it was flawed from the very get-go in terms of the... but definitely the Nixon shock and the fact that we decoupled globally, nationally issued a sovereign currency from a hard-backed standard, be it gold, silver, or whatever, and we went to fiat currency, which then by default becomes explicitly trust-based and trust-based only. Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing else behind it anymore. As Mark said, if the central bank says, here is $1 trillion, okay, right? I can't see the equivalent in gold. I'll take your word for it. And because the whole system runs on it, we'll say, yes, it is a massive... Hans Christian Andersen's The Emperor is not wearing any clothes. But as long as nobody says it, we're all assuming the clothes are on, right? So, yeah, that is sort of the fact that we went from at least hard-backed to no backing, fiat only, is also definitely a point in the change journey.
聊到这里，我们可以看到，所谓去美元化，从来不是一夜之间发生的货币政权更替，更不是美元化，从来不是一夜之间发生的货币政权更替，更不是美元马上被某一种货币全面取代。真正发生的是一个延续数十年的国际货币体系正在压力之下缓慢调整。美元依然拥有最深的金融市场、最广的使用网络。最成熟的支付体系以及长期积累下来的制度惯性，只要全球贸易、债务、储备、结算和避险需求仍高度依赖这套网络，美元的中心地位就不会轻易消失。但另一方面，美元体系所依赖的信任也不再是理所当然，债务扩张、金融危机、制裁工具化、支付体系政治化以及国际关系中的阵营分化，都在推动越来越多国家思考一个问题：如果关键交易、外汇储备和跨境支付过度依赖单一货币、单一网络，那么一旦外部环境突变，自己的经济安全该如何保障？这正是本期内容最值得关注的地方。货币表面上是纸币，账户余额和支付代码背后却连着国家信用、产业能力、法律制度、军事安全和政治关系。因此，理解货币不能只盯着汇率涨跌，也不能只看谁手里拥有更多外汇储备。货币首先是交易工具，是计价单位，也是储存价值的载体，但更深一层，它是一种社会关系，是不同市场、企业、国家乃至普通人之间对未来能否兑现承诺的共同信念。一张钞票之所以有价值，不是因为纸张本身，而是因为人们相信明天仍然有人愿意接受它。国际货币也是同样的道理，谁能提供稳定、流动性、安全感和可预期性，谁就更容易获得信任。中国推动人民币国际化，也应当放在这样的框架中理解。它并不意味着人民币短期内会成为新的全球唯一中心货币。 人民币尚未完全自由兑换，中国也仍然把金融稳定、资本管控和经济安全放在重要位置。但这并不妨碍人民币通过贸易结算、双边互换、本币融资、离岸市场、一带一路合作以及 CEPS 等支付基础设施逐渐扩大实际使用范围。它的逻辑更像是在原有体系之外增加更多通道、更多选择和更多缓冲，而不是简单复制美元过去的路径。对许多发展中国家和新兴经济体而言，这种变化尤其具有现实意义。他们未必想在大国之间选边站，也未必相信任何一种体系能够解决全部问题。但当本币结算、区域支付、货币互换和多边金融合作不断增加时，他们至少拥有了降低单一依赖的空间。未来的国际金融格局很可能不是一个中心取代另一个中心，而是美元、欧元、人民币以及更多区域货币和支付网络并存。这个过程会带来效率损失、规则摩擦和新的竞争，但也可能推动各方重新讨论更加平衡、更具韧性的金融安排。欧元的处境同样提醒我们，货币国际化不是印出更多钞票，也不是宣布某种雄心就能实现。欧元拥有庞大的经济基础和重要的国际地位，却仍受到欧洲内部政治协调、资本市场整合、财政机制和对外战略选择的制约。人民币、欧元乃至其他货币未来能走多远，最终都取决于各自能否建立稳定可信的制度环境，能否让国际使用者相信资产安全、规则连续、市场可进可出，并且在危机来临时有能力承担责任。更值得警惕的是，货币竞争一旦被过度武器化，最后受影响的往往不是金融精英，而是普通企业、劳动者和消费者。支付渠道被切断，融资成本上升，贸易壁垒增加，货币剧烈波动，都会传导到就业、物价和生活质量。大国可以把货币当作地缘政治工具，但世界不能只剩下对抗性的金融工具。真正成熟的国际秩序不应是谁把谁排除在体系之外，而应是在竞争中保留合作，在分歧中维持交易，在安全诉求与共同繁荣之间找到新的平衡。而从更长远的角度看，本期讨论还提出了一个更深的问题：我们究竟希望货币服务什么？是服务无限扩张的债务与投机，还是服务实体经济、社会稳定和普通人的生活？如果货币只是在全球范围内不断追逐资源、转移风险、放大贫富差距，那么无论最后占据中心的是美元、欧元还是人民币，问题都不会真正消失。货币本应是连接人与人、国家与国家的工具，而不该成为制造割裂和掠夺的唯一尺度。所以，看待去美元化、人民币国际化和多货币体系，最重要的不是急着判断谁赢谁输，而是看清世界正在从单一中心走向多种力量并存。这个变化不会平稳，也不会整齐，更不会按照任何一方预设的剧本推进，但它提醒每一个国家，真正的金融安全来自产业基础、制度信用、开放合作和风险韧性，也提醒每一个普通人，理解货币就是理解我们身处的世界如何分配机会、风险与未来。你认为未来的国际货币体系会走向多极平衡，还是会在竞争加剧中形成新的壁垒？欢迎在评论区留下你的看法，也欢迎点赞订阅。